everyone. Welcome to Ambeon Insights. In a world where the global connectivity and strategic foresight defines the success of a business, the international business leadership has become more vital than ever. It's a bridge between cultures, economies, and innovation. And our guest today has succeeded in this role much better than anybody else. And I'm honored to welcome Mr. KB Rao, a distinguished corporate leader whose career spans over 4 decades and across many countries. He currently serves as a senior advisor at Boston Consulting Group and the chairman of Tata International Singapore Private Limited. Mr. Rao, welcome to Ambeon Insights.
Thank you, Dilisha, for having me in your show today. Well, I've kicked the ball for about 45 years.
Okay.
A third of it in the beginning was out of India and in many sectors, and much part of it was in FMCG and pharmaceutical industries. Then I moved and pivoted to Singapore. About 30 years I spent in Singapore, and the last 20 plus years was with the Tata Group. So officially I
2
retired.
decades with
Yeah.
Tata.
And I retired last year. And I don't call it retirement. Since retirement, I call it refirement to be relevant to the new order of things that are happening and connecting and remaining a bridge to the next generation, as it were. So I do serve on quite a few boards, including a Sri Lankan owned board in Singapore with the MAS Group. I do chair as non-executive chairman of some of our Tata subsidiaries outside. And I do a fair amount of advisory work. And that keeps me engaged, is connected to what's happening around the world. And reflecting back, I was very fortunate. You said successful. Success is not a destination in my view. Success is a journey. And I had an amazing journey. I was very blessed. I've traveled to more than 50 countries. I've done real business with over 40. And in terms of roles, I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in the private equity and VC investment side of it. I've also had a short stint with the Singapore Civil Service. So I've had many things rolled into it. And I have no
Private and
complaints. Yes, both. And I have no regrets. And I had lots of fun.
And that definitely doesn't sound like a retirement for me.
Not at all.
Not at all.
I call it refirement.
Refirement. That's a beautiful way of putting it. And Mr. Rao, now your career, as you said, spans over 4 decades. You said 45 years, and around many countries as well. Around 40 countries.
I've traveled to 50 plus countries, but I
worked
think I've
in
done
40
business
countries.
or have dealt with about 40 countries for sure, and almost the entire Asia Pacific region in some level of depth.
That's wonderful. So, how has this global exposure has shaped your leadership philosophy in business?
Well, two aspects of it. The first aspect is it broadens your mind. If you're receptive and if you're like a sponge which can absorb cultures, you become very multicultural. The truth of leadership, whether in a region or in the world or in an organization, is the same reality that you have in front of you is experienced, viewed, and understood differently depending on the cultural context of that individual and where he comes from. So I think you develop a certain diversity of thought and you develop a mental breadth and resilience to accept multiple cultures, which are sometimes conflicting, sometimes challenging, and yet you learn to build trust and to be able to do business with people from not the same region or the same kind of culture that you belong, but ultimately, no matter what culture it is, ethics, purpose, and people are the same. And if
Those
you
are the
can resolve
values.
this, you'll be a good leader wherever you are.
Is it only in business or
It's
whatever the leadership
reality.
with the cultures and managing different cultures?
I think this is about life in general, and I think you can't distinguish leadership from a personality of an individual. It is not something that you pick up as a skill. Of course, you can sharpen some leadership practices and traits, but it's all about the values you live with, what you believe in it, and what drives you, what inspires you, and how do you impact other people in an organization and to lead them towards what you want to be achieved. And it's a very people glue, I would say. And how do you create that glue? How do you create that stickiness? How do you get more people into it? All of that is leadership.
Okay. So, in that same thought, Mr. Rao, what are the most essential factors in giving leadership for a global business?
I suppose whether it is domestic or global, the fundamentals of leadership are the same. Whether it's large organization or small, a certain level of ethical standards, values that hold you together, driving and striving towards a purpose larger than the business goal alone, impacting lives, impacting your purpose, impacting the planet, impacting the environment, or impacting in more ways than one the stakeholders of a certain business. These are common fundamentals, whether it's a small business, large business, domestic business, or international business. That is something that cuts across. The differences are this, in my view. In a structured large enterprise, you have more processes, and the leader's job is to maintain processes with people. Both are equal. And to ensure that people follow those processes and build newer processes to run those enterprises into the future. When it comes to startups, it's all about people. They still have to build the processes. What are the right processes, the right practices that will lead them from their inception stage to a stage of relative maturity and growth? So the strokes of leadership may be somewhat different, but fundamentals are the same.
Okay. So, you prefer having processes or not having
I
processes?
think no organization can ever exist. Even a family will have unwritten processes at home,
Okay.
which are called the laws of governance in a family. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? And it's not a written book, by the way, right? But if you don't have them, it's a situation of free for all. And the more the processes are matured, the better it is, because what happens with processes? You get a performance which is predicted, performance that is repeatable, performance which is less surprises. That's what a process does. And just like a brand, you want to have the same experience of a brand, right? When you buy a brand, you want to go to a company or you want to go to a coffee shop, you want to have the same experience unless there are processes behind that. You will have different experiences, different times. When you have a standardization of process, you will have the same. Similar in a startup too. If you're going for a product or a solution, you want to give a certain satisfaction, joy, and delight to your customer. If you want it to be predictable, there has to be a strong process to support it. But process by itself can become so matured sometimes that it can end up becoming a bureaucracy. It's very important to have the people dimension along with the process dimension. It's not one for the one in replacing the other, but complementing one another. That's very, very crucial. So, in a matured organization, processes are matured. You must see that they don't become bureaucracies and see that people have greater scope to contribute, to change, to grow, to develop. That's the challenge. In a smaller organization, you have a lot of passion and lots of people. You need to build the right processes so that you don't go too wrong and you don't have
Find the right balance.
So to find the right balance in both, but essentials of this. Integrity,
Right.
authenticity, being real and not being fake, and having the right values are a constant no matter where, what. All forms of leadership makes you a distinguished leader if you have these qualities.
Wonderful. And in your view, I think now innovation is becoming a major topic in business world. Um, what can distinguish a company which is truly innovative from something that just adopt new technologies?
Good question. Let me try and help define a little bit about what I understand of innovation. The starting point for most people is having a bright idea an idea which comes to your mind, or to my mind, or somebody else's mind. And then you start believing that idea, and you develop that idea to shape it into what? Some form of invention, something that you create. But invention doesn't have a hand or a leg. It has only got an idea which is shining in the head, right? But how do you make it into an innovation? Is how do you productize it, customize it, make it work to either fulfill an existing need or a problem, and it must solve for that. Only then it's an innovation. Or to do something better, different, faster, cheaper. So when you look at an innovation, it is a concretized idea which is relevant for use. If it is not relevant for use, it is not an innovation at all. Now, when you're talking about buy or make innovation, and I think the question is not about organizations need to be innovative or not innovative, existing business, new business, disruptive, non-disruptive. How do I maintain my continuity in the business? The biggest challenge for large businesses today is how do you manage continuity? How do I constantly grow?
To become relevant.
Correct. And 24 by 7, the world is changing and technology is changing. So it is not a conflict, but it's a convergence. To maintain your current stature, position, and leadership, or to grow your leadership, you have to integrate, adopt, and bring into your system a level of technology readiness, being advanced, and what better than to be innovative internally. So, there again, it's not mutually exclusive. You could adopt technologies which are relevant, which will give you speed. You don't build everything yourself. But what you need is you need to have an innovative mindset. I take element A from this small company, I buy element B there. I've got C and D with me, and I make a recipe. When I put all of this, I'm right ahead of everybody else in my competition. I'll give me a growth path for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So it's actually a state of mind, in my view.
State of mind for the business or the people involved?
It is business is all people together. There is no business without people. Business by itself can't be done by AI. AI is a tool to help people achieve more with less time. That's my definition of it. And ultimately, all creations today in business or otherwise are done by people. People who have got their own minds, who have got their ideas, who have their creativity and ability to put various disconnected parts into connect and make something happen. And we don't know what people can make them to happen. You only come to know when you give them the opportunity to try. And other part of innovation is an ability to have the courage to dream something which is not reality yet. If it is reality, it's not an innovation. It's creating a new reality in which you believe and make it happen. And to do that, A, you must have the courage. And B, as leaders, as companies, the biggest incentive you can provide to innovation is giving them the comfort to dare to try and to fail. It is better to reward a person who's dared to try and fail rather than someone who never took the risk of trying.
I think the businesses do the otherwise, like they want
Unfortunately,
people
yes.
to
I'll give you an example from
not
my
to fail.
Tata experience.
Right.
Well, we have the group today, I've retired, but very much a part of the Tata system, well over 1 million people. And we globally run a program called Innovista, an innovation festival that runs through all our companies, where teams of people are empowered. They're given a bit of a challenge to solve a problem, or they create a new idea and say, we're going to work on it. The resources are provided by the company. They try it out, and then there is a competition where they present. And during that presentation, we not only award those who are winners, but we also recognize those who have tried, dared to try, and failed.
That's wonderful.
So what it does is it gives the courage to the person to go and do the impossible. And unless you try and do the impossible, you don't push the boundaries of invention and innovation.
So, how has this initiative helped the company to grow?
Tremendously. There's so many new innovations in the group, and that is why innovation is not exclusive from continuation of my existing business. If you are not innovative, as it said, if you don't keep running and remain where you are going to be left behind. Innovation is that race that you've got to run. And the other part of innovation is innovation is not an individual sport. It is not like being on the treadmill and you do and fix your muscles and you go to the gym. It is a game to be played together. It is rough and tough. You're going to get more people together. It's like playing soccer or maybe basketball. And innovation is all about getting more people on board to what you are planning and what you want to do, because you need collaborators for innovation in the system. Otherwise, innovation won't happen. You need to have believers in it. You need to have sponsors in it. You need to have leaders who gently support. Leaders don't have to sit and stamp their foot and say, this is innovation. Leaders have to create an ecosystem for people to play around, try, fail, dare, do, and encourage that whole vision of trying to do something in an organization. It's very inspiring for young people if you create an innovative plan.
Wonderful. And so in that same thought, you're talking about the sponsoring and sponsorships and the investments. How does the corporate investments world in the current world? And also, how does it differentiate from the investments by individuals?
Very good. Before I come to that answer, let me give you what I mean by sponsorship. Sponsorship is providing an umbrella.
Okay.
It doesn't mean only cash. It's providing an environment for people to try, experiment. It's like creating a certain lab situation and creating time, space, structure, and perhaps some system as well to encourage people in groups in an organization to be innovative and try out new things. And sponsor is also a leadership trait in one way. I'll give you an example of my early days in my career in FMCG. I was to launch a product and I was spending sleepless nights because it's very, very difficult to take some decision. I was dilly-dallying whether it's right or wrong. Right or wrong. Should I do this or shouldn't I do this? My typical being on the bridge, walking back and forth but not crossing the bridge. My boss called me, who's no longer there, but a great boss in marketing where I cut my teeth under. And he said to me, KV, you seem to be very worried. I said, boss, I'm not able to take a decision what I'm supposed to do. What should be the sizing of the pack of a bakery shortening I was to launch in India for the first time? He said, very quietly, KV, go and decide. If it is a success, it's yours. If it's a failure, blame it on me. That is true quality of leadership which got instilled in me. And when you say something like this, and let me tell you, I've repeated this to a number of people who work with you, and you will get superlative performance. And there is nothing more inspiring and motivating when you know your boss is the sponsor and you've got his back for you.
How many times you got the blame?
Not really much. I failed, but if you don't fail, you don't learn. But the problem of failure is how much you learn out of failure is more important than what you've gained. Actually, failures can teach you a hell of a lot more than successes. But you need to be reflective to learn. And there's this beautiful saying I never get tired of sharing with a younger set of people. What is experience? Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Right.
If you get what you want, it's not really experience. Right. Now I have a slightly bigger version of it. Okay. And we talk about wisdom, right? And people are wise with experience. So when you get lots of experience, which means repeat experience into experience into experience, and you've seen a lot of life and I've faced a lot of adversity, you start becoming wise. And wisdom is insight. And be able to predict a bit about based on what is happening. So there are two parts to this. there are people with great ideas, and I'm talking about the new venture capital world or the private equity world. Venture capital is much more early stage, private capital gets a little more mature. I've had my hand in both the sectors. And there are a million technologies and a million ideas. So here you have individual investors who are money are looking at two basic lenses. One is some feel that I've done very well in my life, I've got this asset, I want to put 10% of my investment in high risk, high reward startups. The startups are high risk and can also be high reward, but 1 in 50, 1 in 30, 1 in 20 will succeed. But that 1 in 50, 20, 30 will actually have 100x possible return or valuation. So your ability to deal with that kind of a risk and the ability to put in a certain individual investment and let it go and also have the courage to write it off and give that the freedom that it requires is a very individual trait. The second is the structured private equity play and the structured venture capital is very smart. Actually, the people who sit on venture capital investment side and the startup entrepreneurs are quite similar in their mindset, their abilities, their intelligence, their knowledge of technology, and so on. So when you get a venture capital coming into your company, it's not just the money. You get their network, you get their support, you get their advice. They sit on your board and they handhold these startup entrepreneurs and support them with what they do not have within the systems, which I said about systems, processes, ensuring that they do things right and up the chances of their success to a great extent. So that's a very good model, and the VC model is growing. The third level, which you talked about, is corporates themselves, which is industries or companies which are running, want to take a certain element of investment in such startups. Typically, the trigger is two kinds. One is, I wish I was in this business. I wish I had a foot or hand into this area which I missed out. For instance, it's a conventional SaaS company which wants to get into, say, an AI product line, which will take a lot more time to build or to develop internally. So they said, why don't I take some investment into some of those, and they could become corollaries, ancillaries, or those companies which can merge and impact your main businesses.
Bring some
So,
synergies.
some synergies, and it could become part of the whole. Or it will take me in a direction I wish to go, and it gives me speed to go there rather than build it. I might as well get into a startup which may give you that level of speed and direction in areas which I wish to go. So there could be a few motivations, but when corporates get into investments, typically it is to see how can it add value to my core businesses rather than saying, can I make this to exit? Whereas individuals is from a wealth point of view. VCs are from valuation point of view and investment exits and how much you get out of it in capital gains advantages. Companies is how much it adds to my core values, mostly core businesses. Yet it takes me in a direction which I may not have. I might have missed the bus, therefore I want to get there. So these are typically my understanding of the three spaces in which innovation flourishes.
Understand. So, Mr. Rao, in that saying now, you're very experienced in investment space. What is your view about Sri Lanka, the current context of Sri Lanka?
That's a brilliant question. I have been associated with Sri Lanka through my career.
Right.
I have seen the kind of turbulences it has gone, and I live in Singapore. I'm a Singaporean, and when Singapore got independence in 1965. Singapore and Sri Lanka are two islands. Singapore is about one-tenth the size, or even population-wise, there. But for many things, Singapore and Sri Lanka were compared, and the economic development stature, of course, Singapore was still a little ahead, but it has no natural resources. Whereas Sri Lanka is blessed with a population 10x, natural resources, lots of talent, and it has a lot of agricultural exports originally, but it has got the people today, it has a complete industrial sort of basic framework, but unfortunately, the country did not lead on to the way it could perhaps have led and is faced with a lot of adversity that we all know. But today, if you see it in the last 2 years, I think the timing is excellent, and I do wish that there is a certain stability in the current structure and stature. And clearly, Sri Lanka, which was on a brink of much greater difficulty, has retreated back. It was on the edge of the precipice, but now it's walked back and slowly marching to areas of stability and growth. I'd compliment, I think, the thinkers behind it, the policy makers. If you look at the blueprint of Sri Lanka, it's very, very impressive. Now, what happens with foreign investments and others is at what stage of the country's growth path economically you are. I think you're at an inflection point today where a lot of good can happen. Let's say in the digital space, since we're talking about digital nation and the digitalization, it has the ability to be a center of excellence for this area in Asia Pacific. If you're looking at things like GCC, global competency centers, I think the biggest pivot is English education, very motivated people. And if you see the Sri Lankans, just like Indians, I've come across the Sri Lankans in the best of executive positions in America, in Europe, in Asia, in Singapore. And they're so good. And they're just as good. They're second to none as people. And the talent is so good that given the right resources and the right environment, I think Sri Lanka will speed ahead. Now, let me come to this point of inflection story. In every country's destination, and if I reflect back, I know a period of glasnost where Russia went through change, You had the CIS republics coming out, say Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, they all came out, Russia was centralized. During that whole change that happened, during Gorbachev's time and thereafter the privatization and all, there was a period of time where entrepreneurs just went to Russia or CIS republics and they became multi-millionaires and some became billionaires because being in the right place at the right time makes all the difference. Here is what I would say to technopreneurs, investors, and people who want to have a higher rate and a higher speed of return and growth. I think the timing is perfect in Sri Lanka. Having said that, I have one or two aspects of caution.
What is that?
There is one thing that you can pick a leaf out of Singapore and learn. Companies, investors, and institutions like certain predictability and certain stability, which comes from trust. So the trust system has to develop not by policy statements, but deliberate actions and ensuring that what you say as objectives and what you aspire, you do. The second is welcoming, not just by saying, come, please invest here, but partnering those investors and those companies and walking the road and walking the talk to see that they get what they want and supporting them in every which way. Because today, international investment and particularly industrial investment, services investment, all of them are each country is competing with one another. It's like 10 companies competing. And therefore, if you want to be in the pole position, yes, you are at the right time, but you also need to do the right things to prove that you're not just in welcoming investors, but you're supporting them fully. I've heard some great stories now sitting in Singapore. Even in aeronautics, some countries in Europe and US are looking at Sri Lanka today and skill development. So there are many areas which are very similar to a huge country like India. You have a microcosm of that macrocosm, and you can do it better, faster, and quicker. So I wish Sri Lanka all the very best.
Thank you. And Rao, is there anything that any structural changes or developments you think that Sri Lanka should do to attract these foreign direct investments?
See, FDI has its own method. People who do foreign direct investments or outward investments from funds, they're pretty smart people. They have hand and feet on the ground. They know what they're doing. So I've already stated this that you walk the talk of your policies and show the commitment to handhold those investors, not just for a short period of time, but build on the credibility of Sri Lanka as an investment destination that is trusted and secure, and I can be here for the long term. Because foreign direct investment doesn't come for a year or two. We're looking at journeys which are going to be decades to make a difference to themselves and make a difference to the country.
That's I think, wonderful advice, Rao. So, you are in Sri Lanka for a special occasion this time and to attend the Global CIO Circle Innovation Summit 2025. And where Millennium IT ESP, a member of Ambeon Group, is also a key supporting partner. How is your experience in this summit and your time in Sri Lanka this time?
I'll just step back and tell you that I didn't know who this institution was.
Right.
They reached out to me from the US, the key founder,
Okay.
and I had only heard two words. One is they said, my partner in this, Arvind the Silva. I said, oh, great. And then he said, I'm doing it in Sri Lanka. My question was, why are you doing in Sri Lanka of all places? And bringing US investors and startups and founders. And when he gave me the logic, I didn't have to ask him any more questions. I said, this is something I like to support, I'll come. Tell me how I can help you with it. And I'm so delighted that there are a whole bunch of maybe 150 or so, and I've been meeting them who are of different age groups. And let me tell you, a group section of them are women.
Oh,
And you must be very proud to meet them. And they're so articulate, so capable, and they're working in some very great positions as CIOs and running their own companies. A good segment of women, a good segment of people who are very young and have got very disruptive startups. There are some mature, some investors, some venture capitalists. It's a very good mix of what is happening. And we have a few Americans and some Asian Americans. So it's very representative of not just United States, but it's strong representation of how South Asia, which includes India and Sri Lanka, who are there in the valley, they're all represented here. And this is causing a lot of interesting, I would say, is a surface area of contact of people. And we talk about networking. But what is it? Unless you meet people and get to know them and spend 2 or 3 days, you don't build the trust. You don't build really equity in this whole thing. And I do hope that this is not just a conference, but a beginning for great partnerships between companies here, companies there, companies amongst them, and for them to come and do something meaningful beyond pure investment in Sri Lanka. And this exposure of all of them to Sri Lanka at this time, if they're true entrepreneurs, it's not for them to use their mind, but to smell the opportunity that Sri Lanka offers, and the timing is perfect. And this should lead up to some very significant positive news. And I'm so glad the way the Singapore, the Sri Lankan institutions have welcomed. And Arvinda spoke yesterday, and some of your leaders in the industry are so passionate. At the end of the day, a country is a partnership of political leaders, industry leaders, community leaders, and ordinary people. If you don't get all these four streams working together, you don't get the act together, you don't get success. So I think we're getting it all together.
That's wonderful news. I think this platform is creating a lot of
Waves.
opportunities.
Beautiful, absolutely.
And you think it's the right time?
Absolutely right. I think more will happen because once you have something of this kind and you spread the good word, more people will start.
So, what would be your advice, Mr. Rao, to young entrepreneurs who are looking to build the next generation of conglomerates? What is the main thing or the mindset they should start with?
Good question. First, you must have a strong belief in yourself. Don't get into entrepreneurship half-hearted. Maybe it'll work, maybe not. It's road ahead with lots of knobs, challenges, and pitfalls. You must be seriously committed to get into it first. The second is you need to be humble. When you get a great idea, which you believe is great, may or may not be that great. So I call it the pinch test. It's not about data. Whenever you get a great idea and you get carried away by it. You need to be committed to your idea, passionate about it, but you must be realistic enough to be able to shape that idea into a solution or an innovation. There's a lot of learning journey. And how does that happen? It only happens when you're humble, you pinch yourself and ask yourself at every step, what's in it? So what? The question. I've done this. So what? You ask these questions to yourself and get as much advice, as much of talking to people who have seen that world, and you're able to not accept everything. You've got to dispense with something, but you must be humble enough to accept and make some modifications to it. The third is being authentic, being real. And if you just go into this one way of saying valuations, 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 you will come to a situation of pitfalls and valuation dips because it is doing the real stuff, the real way to solve a problem and create a solution that really impacts and delights a customer. Because at any business, at the end of the spectrum, there's a fool who's called the customer. You may call him a fool or he's the god. And it defines your success or not. And if you don't have a customer position that solves a problem or delights or fulfills, you don't have. And please understand, in realism terms, are you a solution in search of a problem or you are building a solution to a problem? Many times, when you get very embedded with your own ideas and obsessed with it, you're creating a great solution, but there isn't a problem that the solution is solving. So you've got to go real world, you've got to get there. And how do you get there? The fourth point I come to is after authenticity is being empathy. And people don't talk about empathy. We talk about data, technology, and all that. Empathy is being empathetic to customer situation. Whether it's an industrial customer, personal customer, if I'm making a lipstick tomorrow, I must be able to empathize with a young lady like you and understand what are your considerations? How do you look at it? How can I put myself into your shoes and see what is it in terms of affordability, quality, looks, stated, unstated, emotional reasons? So that is basically centricity of the we call it customer centricity. But that only comes when you're able to empathize with the real world, with the real situation, and not operate in a world that you create of
Your imagination.
imagination. So these are some learnings. And the last thing which I would say, never dispense with the old world insight and charm. It's not that I want to sell what we know as old world, but I think people who have seen life over a period of time bring in certain wisdom, and it's always good for young people to be put together if it's in corporate investment or corporate venturing, which we talked about. We do bring in advisors sometimes who have had it and seen it, who are not there to destroy the enthusiasm, but put a hand on the shoulder and tell the young women in the world or the young men in the world how you can do it better. And I think having a certain respect for that insight and that knowledge of the past is always good. But after saying all of that, if you become too deferent to all of these processes, you won't be an innovator. You must be somewhere, I think great entrepreneurs have been a little indifferent towards it. Deference is not natural to them. They believe in it. They're a bit, somewhat odd or outliers who want to do their own. And I think you must have the spirit to try, spirit to be an adventurous, and also have the last but not least, huge amount of resilience. If without resilience, you cannot be an entrepreneur, you cannot be starting. The road is rather challenging, and you should not be breaking down when you see adversity, failure. There are many startup guys who don't succeed in the first go. They go for the second and third and they make a success because they're resilient. If you're not resilient, you give up. You can't do it. Once you're in that, there's no giving up, there's no looking back.
That's not very bad.
Moving forward. Yeah.
Yes. All right, that's
Thank you.
wonderful, Mr. Rao. And I think that your wisdom, the wealth of experience that you're carrying, and the journey that you have walked through, I think that really helps all the young minds who are watching us. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you for being in Sri Lanka. I hope you had a wonderful stay and you will have a wonderful experience in Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
very
Thank you
much.
for having me here. And as I said, I believe the young people in Sri Lanka show me a lot of promise. They're full of hope, passion, and hopefully they also build some purpose in what they're doing. And I think you've all the keys for the kingdom to conquer as Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A kingdom to conquer, Sri Lanka. And thank you for watching Ambeon Insights. We will be back soon with another exciting episode.